Bound by Love is an esoteric anime life sim that delves into how infatuation can become twisted into a dark obsession. I really admire the ballsy tags this game covers. Even for this genre, these subjects are almost never shown from the perpetrator's perspective. Obviously, this kind of thing isn't gonna be for everyone, but even if the tags aren't to your gooning sensibilities, you might still find the story to be interesting from a psychological thriller lens. All right, enough preamble. Let's get into it. Yokoshima is a low-ranking office worker at an unpopular magazine. His bosses treat him very poorly, and he isn't any more popular with his co-workers. Every day, he clocks into Weiji and then clocks out to eat a cheap dinner and goon before bed. However, there is one thing in his life that keeps the dark thoughts at bay. Hazuki, his beautiful senpai at the company. She's the only one who treats him with any kindness and stands up against the others when they look down on him. Despite it all, Yokoshima was content so long as she was in his life. However, even that was about to come to an end. Hazuki was now up for a promotion at a foreign branch and would soon be transferring to a different country. Yokoshima, let's say, doesn't take this well. She's become his sole obsession. Losing her now would be the end of his whole world. He endlessly stews over what to do and decides that he needs to take action. He comes up with a multi-phase plan to make Hazuki his, once and for all. The game is split into two main gameplay sections, the pursuit arc in the beginning, and then the training arc for the rest of the game. In this pursuit arc, Yokoshima must investigate his target as much as he can to formulate an airtight approach for acquiring her. The days are split into 4 time slots for activities. You need to come up with a plan and execute it successfully before she leaves in a few days. Hazuki also has 2 stats that you need to manage, which will affect the success rate of the plan. How you interact with her will affect these stats, so you need to be careful getting the information you need without causing her vigilance to raise too much. The town is split into a few small contained maps. You need to explore around and talk with people to get leads on a viable approach. Yokoshima gets on the cramped train early and finds himself right behind Hazuki. He takes this opportunity to get closer to her without being seen. After work, he asks to walk home with Hazuki. He uses this time to carefully prod her for information. After seeing her off, he checks out a trendy cafe where he meets a clerk who goes into detail about how their coffee is processed. After some prodding, the clerk says he can give Yokoshima some of the chemicals he uses in exchange for some niche amateur footage. Yokoshima heads to the convenience store to get some sleeping remedies and a camera. He heads back to the office now that nobody is there to set up the footage for later retrieval, but he still needs to do some testing with the medicine in the meantime. The next day, Yokoshima finds himself on the train with Hazuki again and becomes more bold with his actions. Upon getting into work, his rude Koihai co-worker gives him the usual attitude, to which he decides that she will make a great test candidate for the medicine. He applies some, and it proves to be very effective. He sees this as his chance to get a little payback for all the times she disrespected him. Later on, Yokoshima and Hazuki are paired up for urgent work on an article, but she dozes off due to all the preparations for the move and stress from her unseen admirer. Yokoshima takes this opportunity to collect precious memorabilia. He considers going further, but the risk of being found out is far too great. After work, Yokoshima delivers the footage to the cafe clerk in exchange for the chemicals, and he now has about all he needs to pull this off. The next day is Hazuki's last day at the office. Yokoshima can't control himself on the train and almost preemptively blows the whole operation by taking too brazen of action. They reach their stop before he can completely follow through, and he manages to just barely avoid being identified. At noon, Yokoshima invites Hazuki to one final lunch on the rooftop. They reminisce a bit as she says goodbye to her friend and confides that she's anxious about everything going on. Yokoshima puts on a reliable front to help reassure her. She playfully feeds him some of her lunch as the two enjoy their last work hangout together. It's finally the day that Hazuki leaves. You are given a variety of options to choose from based on all the tools and info you had found up until now. Once you have chosen an approach, there is a short section in which you need to execute this plan. Yokoshima catches up to Hazuki and takes action. It is tough, but he has thoroughly prepared for this. He successfully pulls it off and brings her back to his place, letting her stay in a room he prepared. He simply can't help himself and immediately pilfers her wizard potential. He has waited so long for this moment, and for it to finally happen is a dream come true. He takes his time and savors an operation well executed. This is the beginning of the latter section of the game, the training arc. Hazuki's training stats need to be developed via a variety of actions that can be taken. She also has some resource stats that need to be maintained to ensure things don't get out of hand. Hazuki is very overwhelmed by this situation. She gives Yokoshima a lot of pushback, but he decides to dive into the training sooner rather than later. Yokoshima eventually returns to work after his mini vacation, only to find the police at the office. Hazuki never arrived at the foreign branch, so an investigation was initiated. Just as Yokoshima is pondering what to do, he is approached by another co-worker who mentions that Hazuki was in the middle of investigating some kind of shady underground operation. That evening, Yokoshima decides to look into this operation, and after greasing a few palms, he acquires membership to an underground auction facility. This is a really important area, as it allows you to purchase items and equipment for training, as well as upgrading your home facilities. Yokoshima overhears two staff members discussing needing a new auction prize soon and mentions something about a fixer. He decides to give them a tip on where to find what they need in exchange for info about this fixer guy. After returning home, Yokoshima gets to work on training. Despite his efforts, she is still very resilient to his regiment. A few nights later, Yokoshima finds the fixer at the park, wherein he contracts him to cover any remaining tracks. Just as he thinks his problems are finally taken care of, he runs into a student on the way back who shows him a picture of Hazuki and asks if he's seen her. She was apparently a friend of Hazuki and is looking into her disappearance. Yokoshima becomes a bit worried when the girl alludes to having a lead and decides to lure her with false information. Once out of sight, he makes his move. Yokoshima has little difficulty in this encounter and uses his victory to pilfer yet another wizard potential. He is thoroughly relieved to have dealt with this potential problem. Afterwards, Yokoshima finds her ID and learns that her name is Mina. He brings her back to his home, where he sets up a makeshift room for her. Yokoshima then brings his attention back to training and seems to be making some headway with his regiments. After a few more days, Hazuki seems to be slightly sick. Yokoshima has a feeling of what this is, so he gets a sample from her and tests it to be sure. He then takes great pleasure in revealing the results to her. Hazuki becomes sickened by the news and deeply resents Yokoshima and the newcomer. Once Hazuki is in this condition, day passings now become 2 months passing. It's actually a pretty smart change because gameplay-wise it functions as the exact same thing, but now allows her to realistically go through the various states at a more reasonable pace. That night, she can't sleep due to the news and is determined to leave before her condition develops any further. After quietly preparing for a few days, she is given her chance one night when Yokoshima is busy with Mina. While he is taking the time to work on his new trainee, Hazuki is able to slip out unnoticed. After finally making it out, she heads through a park where she is confronted by a group of vagrants. They are quite enthusiastic about her visit. They create a public spot for her and each utilize her in this new role. Eventually, Yokoshima finds her and manages to bring her back under his supervision. The training continues for many months until Hazuki is now entering the late stages. Much to Yokoshima's annoyance, she has managed to retain some of her defiance, even after all this time. However, the same can't be said for Mina, who Yokoshima was able to fully complete training with. As Hazuki is falling into deep despair, she is suddenly awoken by her co-workers. They reassure her that she was just experiencing a nightmare and that everything is going to be all right. Just as relief is washing over her, things take a turn as they comment on her physical state. Suddenly, they all become Yokoshima as the dread sets back in. She is awoken by a sharp pain as it is finally time. She curses her circumstances as her body goes through the painful process. There were no serious complications and a healthy new family member arrives. Many years later, both Hazuki and Mina are mothers of many children. It took a long time, but Yokoshima had eventually been able to complete training with Hazuki. He is finally able to enjoy a happy life with a loving family. How this family originally came about becomes a distant and unspoken memory. All in all, the game is simple but really good. The training mechanics are surprisingly in-depth, with a lot of options that can lead to a number of scene variations. My main criticism is that there isn't much to do in the training arc after you've dealt with the main story obstacle. It pretty much just becomes going to work in the morning and then going back home to train. There's still quite a lot of endings and scenarios that I left out, so if the game interests you, then I urge you to give it a try. The dev has a previous game, as well as a new upcoming one. I really hope both of them get Steam ports eventually. Check the dev's CN page if you want to keep track of his projects. As always, remember to apply the publisher's patch to the Steam version before playing. Thanks for watching, and if you want the unaltered version of this video, then check the description.